A casual game of chess takes place across the river from the World Trade Center in New York City. But inside, a $1 million battle is being fought 107 floors up by the two best in the game. Reigning world champion Garry Kasparov and challenger Viswanathan Anand have taken the mind-bending tension to new heights. Two gladiators venture into their final week to decide who will be crowned the king of chess. Hello, I'm Maurice along with Grandmaster Danny King here in the stretch run of the 1995 Intel World Chess Championship. Welcome back to New York City, where even the World Chess Championship has made it to Broadway, here on the Sony Jumbotron in Times Square. Well, world champion Garry Kasparov has a commanding lead. After the early draws, he seems to have come into his own. He's had no problem keeping his focus despite playing these championships in the electrifying atmosphere of New York City.
We're attracting a lot of media and a lot of great public interest, and that was my my permanent dream, that once the World Championship match would be in the center of the public attention, not only the chess world but just world itself. And I think this match is making a big difference, and that's why I like New York even more.
But for Viswanathan Anand, playing in his first World Championship, perhaps it hasn't been quite so easy. You know, he's not so used to this kind of media circus that he's involved in.
Well, the largest crowd of this match gathered in anticipation of Garry Kasparov retaining his title for the 5th consecutive time. Kasparov, on the other hand, felt that all was not finished.
I think he probably gave up his hopes to win the match, but still there are more games to go, and he's still very dangerous, and it's I hope I will show a little bit more aggressive attitude with white pieces. That's why there will be some games in this match.
Well, game 17, Anand with the white pieces, Kasparov with the black pieces, and despite what Kasparov said, it looked as if Anand really came for a fight today.
That's right. You know, he's been working very hard over the last couple of days, and this is really his last chance to have a go at Kasparov. He has the white pieces, and he's got to make the most of it.
Well, Kasparov has found himself in this situation before. In 1986, he lost 3 consecutive games, beginning with game 17 against Anatoly Karpov.
Well, here he'd have to lose 4 games in a row to lose the title, so it's pretty unlikely, but he still looks very nervous today, very nervous indeed. Anand opening with his pawn to e4.
Well, what about the challenger? He's got to feel pretty nervous too. After all, he's only defeated Kasparov once in 4 years, and now he's being asked to defeat him 4 times in a week.
Well, to a certain extent, I think the pressure is off Anand. You know, it's such a tall order. No one thinks he's going to do it. So he can play really with a free hand.
Well, Kasparov now playing the move d6, and they've begun with the Sicilian defense. And we jump ahead now to move 16. Anand playing the move a3, a very casual pawn move on the left side of the board.
This is actually a great move because it's saying to Kasparov, well, what are you actually doing in this position? Every move you make is actually going to compromise his position. It's a very clever move from Anand indeed.
And Kasparov spent 25 minutes studying this last move and finally played the move b5, but he obviously was not happy with the situation.
25 minutes, that's a lot of time. Both players have 40 moves to make in 2 hours, so that's a very large percentage of the time allotted to it.
And bishop takes f6, played by Anand, and Kasparov, thinking about this situation, captured on f6 with the pawn.
Well, that has shattered his pawn structure. Black's pawns scattered all over the place, but at least Black has some compensation in the form of the 2 bishops. The 2 bishops are a very potent team.
And Kasparov now defending his pawn on the d6 square, and Anand leaping into the d5 square with his knight.
Well, this is the big problem for Black when his pawns get shattered. There are many weak squares on the position, and that knight can't be budged by any of Kasparov's pawns, so Anand looks as though he's getting control of this position.
And Kasparov fighting back mightily, exchanging queens on the d2 square, and now Anand recapturing rook takes queen on d2, and it seemed as if Anand really had control of this position. Kasparov needing to find some counterplay, some way of fighting back.
Yeah, his pawns are shattered, but if he can get his bishops going, they'll slice across the board, causing Anand all kinds of trouble.
Well, if we jump ahead, we see Kasparov struggling mightily, trying to generate some kind of play, and he captured on f5, and his bishops had freer reign in this position, Daniel.
It's true, but Anand has managed to coordinate his forces very well. Look at those rooks, doubled on the d file, and now the knights in the center of the board on superb squares. They can't be kicked away by any of Kasparov's pawns. And this last knight move in particular, attacking rook and bishop simultaneously, is a bit of a problem. And Kasparov must give back one of the bishops for the knight. He must exchange off bishop for knight, and so Anand looks like he's gaining control of the position.
Such a critical game for the challenger, needing to make the most of his chances here and just trying to remain calm in this position before capturing that bishop on d4, and he has played rook takes bishop.
Well, Anand's great advantage here is that his forces are so well coordinated. Look at the rooks in the center of the board, doubling up, protecting the knight. So a very powerful position indeed for Anand.
Well, Kasparov bringing his rook down to the 7th rank, his rook penetrating into the heart of Anand's position, but Anand quickly swatted that away by bringing his rook back and challenging Kasparov's rook.
Well, Kasparov thrashing around trying to find counterplay, but really this can be stopped very easily. The rook and the bishop attacking the pawn on c2, but Anand simply brings the rook back, covering that, and really Kasparov's counterattack has come to nothing. He's simply had to exchange off rooks, and then once again Anand has control.
And Kasparov now needing to stop the threat of knight e7 check, brought his king over to f8, and Anand bringing his king over to the center of the board.
Very important indeed. When you're in an endgame, you must bring your king closer to the center. They're not in any danger at all in an endgame when there are so few pieces, and kings can actually be very powerful pieces indeed, particularly when they're attacking the opponent's pawns.
Well, Kasparov feeling the pressure, Anand's piece is well posted in the middle of the board, and he felt compelled to capture that knight on d5.
So even after this exchange though, Anand has some advantage. The rook on a very active square in the center of the board, and look at Kasparov's pawns. They're all split. So Anand still in the driving seat here.
Trying to remain intense, and Anand bringing his rook over to b5, and suddenly his rook was going to penetrate into the b7 square, and Kasparov moved his king up to e6.
Well, this is a great idea from Anand. His rook so active, hassling Kasparov's pawns.
And Kasparov just giving away his pawn on a7, and suddenly Anand was up a pawn.
Well, this is a courageous decision for Kasparov. He'd rather play actively than defend his pawns, but normally a pawn in such an endgame is going to be enough to win the game. But Kasparov fighting back mightily. He's given away this pawn in order to get active counterplay against Anand's weak pawns. There we go, pushing the pawn forward, and he's hoping to get his own rook in to attack the pawns. But Kasparov does look worried here, and that is a great move from Anand. What he's doing is he's trying to get his rook back across to defend the pawns, and Kasparov had obviously overlooked this idea.
Feeling the heat was the world champion with not many options in this position, so he finally took the pawn on h4, and he had equalized the material situation on the board, the same number of pawns for both sides.
And that was a great move from Anand, checking the king, and now his rook can come back. And if you look at Kasparov's pawns, material might be equal, but his pawns are scattered all over the board. They can't protect each other, and it's just sinking in how difficult his position is. He's feeling uncomfortable.
Not happy at all with this situation was the champion, trying to figure out what to do, but for the moment his king in check, needing to move it somewhere, and that in and of itself was a difficult decision, and Kasparov finally backed it up to d7.
And now Anand's rook is attacked. He must move it, but he's got a fantastic square to go to. Now look at that rook. It's attacking the pawn on the left and the right. So Kasparov thrashing around, and it's here that Anand missed a great chance. He could have moved his pawn forward to b4. Now look at those pawns on the left. They're connected. Very powerful indeed. When they're connected, they work well together. But instead of that, he simply took the pawn off on the right straight away. It looked very tempting to do that, but it meant that his pawns on the left became split. Kasparov just exchanging pawns there, and notice the two pawns on the left now split. They can't protect each other. And although Anand is a pawn up, it's going to be very difficult to win this position.
With those weak pawns on the left side, Anand really couldn't make any headway. And if we jump ahead, we see that he's actually down a pawn. He decided to give away a couple of pawns in order to get some aggressive possibilities. But Danny, amazing how the world champion actually turned this game around.
Yeah, he's defended brilliantly here. And although Anand's king and pawn very active, very far advanced, he has just enough counterplay, Kasparov has just enough counterplay to hold the game.
And Anand, realizing that he had lost his chance, looking for something to do, but it was obvious as the champion left the room that it was very difficult pushing his pawn there to f6 to get anything going on this chessboard.
Now what the players are trying to do here is push their pawns to the 8th rank. If they can get a pawn there, it'll turn into a queen. But both sides have pawns marching down the board, so the position is roughly balanced, and Kasparov knows it. You can see him there glancing up at Anand as if to say, well, hey, come on, why are we bothering playing this position on? This is just a draw.
Well, dragging it on was Anand. A draw meant conceding the match. So he just played his king down to f8, and the crowd now in anticipation of this finish soon to come, and Kasparov moving his king up to the e6 square.
Very important bringing the king into the game, because the king can support the black pawn when it comes down the board. You notice Anand there pushing his pawn a square closer to the queening square, but Kasparov bringing his rook across to cover.
And now Anand getting out of the way, moving his king to g8, and Kasparov playing the move d4, and Anand got a queen. He got his pawn down to the other side and got a queen.
But Kasparov has it covered. He just took the queen with his rook. He's given up the rook, so now Anand has king and rook against 2 pawns. But Kasparov's pawn is so far advanced down the board that he can draw this game. He can do exactly the same. He can force Anand to give up his rook for the pawn.
And Anand giving Kasparov a smile there, and Kasparov returning it. And with nothing left to play for on the board, the pawn on d3, too dangerous. Anand captured the pawn. And after king takes rook, only the 2 kings would be remaining. An obvious draw, and he had done it. Garry Kasparov getting the half a point he needed in order to maintain his title as world champion once again.
How does it feel going to clinch the title?
You know, it's not the first title, it's not the second title, it's not even the third title, but I feel very, very happy. This match was very difficult, and I feel I did a very good job, and I feel extremely good. And also, I didn't play a proper World Championship match for 5 years at least. I think it's even 87 in Seville. That was a really tough match. In 1990, I was confident I was going to win, and having such a tremendous resistance from my opponent and such a tremendous preparation, I didn't know about this before the match, but I felt that it would be very, very difficult, and I think I was not scared, but I was not comfortable during the first week. In fact, the game 9 was not the worst day in this match, because at that time already I felt I'm playing chess. I'm working. My head was working. I spent probably 10 to 12 hours a day working, including, of course, the games I played, and I felt good that I was concentrating and I was not scared. But before the match, I couldn't feel that I'm, using all my potential, and that was a little bit scary.
Garry, a hearty congratulations on defending your title. You don't have to worry for a few more months or whatever it's going to be. How do you feel?
Happy, very happy, but also exhausted. It was a very difficult match, and I hope nobody will be misled by the amount of quick games that we played. It was unbelievable tension, and just before today's game, I had problems, to push myself into the game, because I didn't want to play. It's psychologically was over. I know probably you have just kind of signal inside you saying, fine, it's done, now you can relax, but you can't relax, and that's, that's a problem when you play such a sharp opening and you don't want to play. I mean, you could go straight into the troubles that I did, and just was saved by a miracle.
A miracle indeed. You had a 3-point lead, so you weren't certainly worried about the title, but obviously you didn't want to lose today's game. So how did you motivate yourself when you found out that you didn't want to play today's game?
I decided to tell myself that that's the last game of the match. And, if I want to be a champion, I should not lose it, Now, I have to finish this job today, and that helped me just to get out of trouble when I just went. The unpleasant result was very, very close.
Right.
Essentially, you got yourselves into trouble a little bit earlier, but it had already, at this point, White has a nice advantage because he might bring his king and get some squares. But still, the move bishop takes d5 caught a surprise.
No, I think I think bishop takes d5 is the best move in this position because, if I try to, I have to push this knight because I have to bring my king to the center. This is clear, Without the king, I cannot survive. Now, if I push the knight, he comes on c3, and my rook now is not, is not well placed. Also, just simply goes king d2, then knight comes somewhere, then king goes on c3. I mean, I felt that it would be easier to defend the endgame just with rooks, because with rooks I always have, it will be more dynamic. Because here it's strategically it's very dangerous. Just after rook exchange I can lose. I mean, it's too dangerous. I mean, White has complete domination of the black squares, and I think it was a correct judgment. I took here king d7. Now he cannot go on king d2 because of c3 check, and then I just take the pawn. It's strangely enough, it's quite a dynamic endgame. I mean, if White wants to win, I mean they should be extremely active. And I expected, in fact, rook a5 here, but I think after a6, king d2, king e6, and then for instance, king d2, king e6, if king c3, then I go d5, king d4, and I just manage to attack this pawn. With rooks, I always have good chances. Now, Anand made a good move, rook b5, king e6, rook b7, and here comes a big surprise for myself. I mean, it's in the speed chess I would play a6 immediately, and after a6, I don't think White can make a serious progress. Now, if he goes on rook a7, then I go rook b6, I also attack the pawn. It's a weakness. If he goes king d2, then rook c5, and then I organize again, play g5, but this pawn is still alive. I organize a counterplay, but he should waste more time by taking my pawn. And I think it's, the limited amount of material, guarantees black draw, because it's very similar to the game, but I don't think, black will have serious problems here. I mean, rook c5 was a kind of blackout, g5, and he made a great move, rook a8. Excuse me, yes.
No.
Rook a8, and after rook a8, black is finished. And it's just I completely missed the idea to bring rook on e4. And I found my only chance here. And in fact, I was surprised that Anand didn't play b4 here. I think after b4, the game would not last long. It's quite clear. Then king has, probably he also thought that rook takes h4 is winning. And no, in fact, thanks for two mistakes that we made. I made mistake, he made mistake. Now we reached a very interesting endgame, which looks completely winning for White after e4. And here I managed to make probably my best move in the game. It looks completely lost for black. If you take here, for instance, then he simply takes on h5. And if I play rook g3, rook f5, king e6, rook f4, f5, and now a5. And the rooks come on a4, and the pawn is, just advancing. Now, and I think that after f5, the position is very unclear because suddenly black organizes counterplay. I have an idea to play f4 and take the pawn. Now, I think it's...
This was bad.
Okay.
This was a clearly bad move. This is an offer of Grandmaster Bill Lombardi.
But I play f4 myself. I don't understand. What's the point? Still just I take the pawn. I take the pawn. No, h2. I know it's not still clear for me. Maybe that's a correct way, but still, when your king comes, maybe I can. Yeah, probably. I don't know. F5 was I don't know. It requires it requires serious analysis because A5 was quite an obvious move. F4, A6, King C7. Now we reached a very interesting position here because it looks completely winning for white. Completely winning for white. But in fact, I'm not sure that is winning. King C3. Now black had to make a tough choice. One idea was to bring my rook on H8 and to push the pawn. Now I could play rook G8 here, but then it's unfortunately, he goes King D3, rook H8. He didn't have time for rook H7 because then I took pawn, and his king comes. Okay, we can reach position like that, But yeah, okay. But F pawn is, without these two pawns, it's draw. Without these two pawns, it would be draw because I just simply, a simple attack this rook, and then when comes here, I play rook F6, rook H6, rook F8, King A7, F7, rook F6. But with these two pawns, unfortunately, I'm lost because his king takes this pawn. Now, and I made a very. I think I made H4 was a good move. Okay, the only move. And after King D3, I think here comes a very important move, rook F2. Because after H3, rook B7 check, black would be lost, Then you just push my king. Rook F2 is a very important move. And his last chance to win this game was to play King E4. I think he had to sacrifice C pawn and just to, I don't know, we have to calculate what is won. Because after C4, I think I made another important move, rook A2. And now it's a funny, there's a move A7. Did you look at this move?
Oh, yes.
Okay, rook takes A7,
yes.
King A7,
yes.
and I'm saved by miracle, King E3, King B6, F4, and D5.
Yeah.
D5, otherwise I'm lost, that took some time to calculate.
We thought also the move C3 gave him chances. We thought the move C4 was wrong.
Yeah,
perhaps King
it's
E4 is the best move, but we thought that we
C3
definitely disagreed with the move C4.
Yeah, I still think this is too. When I exchange, it's very difficult for the black king is quite close now, and when we exchange this pawn to this pawn, I think it should be a draw. Black still will have some difficulties, but I think the end game 2 against 1 because black king is quite close, and this is a good pawn. Just it controls enough important squares. And despite the fact that he has 2 also good pawns, they're very good when rook with rook and pawn against rook ending. But he cannot, cut my king, just in proper way. And
show us what line you were worried about after King E4.
I don't know. I didn't make a calculation. I would take a pawn here, but I don't know. And I suppose you were afraid that he might make. Yeah, maybe, but I'm not so sure. F4, maybe I play H3. Still, rook H7, H2. F5, rook F2. Yeah. Yeah, no, draw, yes? Should be. It's king F5, maybe by D pawn is also. Maybe it's already draw, because it's. I don't know. It's very interesting rook endgame. It's very limited material, but black had a very, strangely enough, this isolated pawn, H5 pawn and rook, they created such a tremendous, mechanism of, putting pressure on all white pieces. And I think C4, rook A2, I think this position should be draw. He could take pawn on H4 immediately, rook H7. But I just can't bring my king. Rook is on A5, and I think it's enough for me to. It's enough. No, that's definitely more complicated. He played king E4, rook A4, and here, for instance, after F4, I didn't call, but I probably even can play D5 check. Yeah, it's a draw, and then rook H6. And my rook is behind now, and the pawn is coming here. He tried. It's the last chance, but okay, it's black had enough defensive resources. That's the only mistake I could make, just to push the pawns without the king. But okay, I play king D7 just in time to bring my king back to the game, and that's D pawn, managed to save the game. They managed to save.
This poor little lonely fellow was a saving grace.
Yes. It's it's.
I would just like to make a personal comment and say that obviously you're in a situation where two draws, one draw wins you the title, one draw wins you the $1 million. But it was very nice to see such a very good game to win the title. I mean, it justifies the victory which you've won so very well. And
yeah, it's also, you're absolutely right. That's it's very important also for my feelings. Just to win to have a last game that secures my title. After such tremendous fight. Which was not easy, and I was under a lot of pressure, and that's that makes me a lot of happy. And just a quick draw. Yeah, exactly. It was a big fight, and as I said, just don't be misled by some short games we played in this match, because it's a lot of pressure, and we need, we don't have any timeouts anymore, and we play not 3 games a week but 4 games a week, and that's, it increased the pace of the event, and if I remember all my matches with Karpov, after four weeks, we could play, let's say, 10 games or even 9 games, 9 to 11 games. Now we played already 17 games, and that's a hell of a difference. And that's but I think it's just now that 20 games is probably the right length of the match, just it gives enough time. It's not too long. 4 games a week, gives a good schedule, and it also gives enough time for players, to get into the fight and just to show the best they can.
One question more, and then with the audience. I can't help but think, back in the early 70s, you had Korchnoi and playing the dragon, but very, very, very few people played the dragon, and Fischer made a living out of just killing the dragon. I mean, and yet here we see that it actually won you the match. How on earth did you come to discover this opening? It must have been a very fortuitous discovery.
Preparing for the match, I realized that, from my previous experiences, that even with all the confidence in my Sicilian line that I've been playing for 20-something years, yes, I needed a second opening. I needed something that would be unexpected by my opponent, and I looked at several lines. I was analyzing a few lines. That was not only choice that I made for my preparation, but after all, I decided in favor of Dragon, because first, Vichy was not playing very convincingly against Dragon. Second, he did not have any in his team, any Dragon professional, and also Dragon is not the opening that you can easily prepare during the match, especially the second half of the match. You can't play only by common sense. This is not the opening you play by common. It requires a very precise knowledge and deep preparation, and I knew that during the match it's very, very difficult to get yourself to analyze such a complicated lines. And also I knew that if Vichy had the chance to talk to one of my coaches from the previous matches, he wouldn't expect. Yes, the dragon was never analyzed as I analyzed a lot of crap probably, for the previous matches that I never played, but Dragon was not in the agenda for any previous match that I ever played for the World Championship title, and I needed probably this kind of shock in Game 9 to start playing this, because I wanted to play it early, but then I just decided let's keep it for the second half of the match. Because, as I said, this opening makes your opponent very nervous. Especially for the strategy that he adopted for this match. Dragon was a very precise choice, because that pushed him to a new land. Just it was very dark forest. Suddenly, instead of playing quiet lines, you have to play aggressively. And in fact, in a Dragon, he never. Today we could, I play rook e8. I could play b5, and probably today we would see an extremely complicated line that he prepared. Maybe just, in fact, after b5 he should play g4. That's eventually g4 and h5. I don't know. I decided to stick with a very. It's a solid, but not probably very not the best move. The position requires to play b5 and a5 and just to attack with black.
That's what I was trying to explain to my audience.
No. Rook e8. In fact, it's a complicated. Rook e8 is a prophylactic move, just preventing g4. But in fact, white also could make some prophylactics. a3 was an excellent move, just showing that black accomplished nothing, with rook e8 and queen a5. And okay, black went to the in theory endgame, Just that's what black deserved. But Rook 8 was more it's coinciding with my mood today. Just to keep and just to defend and just to not to crack under the pressure. And that's why I prefer Rook 8. But eventually, of course, B5 is a much better move. I know it.
We're back at the World Trade Center in New York City, where the 1995 Intel World Chess Championship continues with Game 18. And Danny, although Garry Kasparov has officially retained the title, they are still playing more games.
Well, that's right. I mean, these rules have always been in existence in the World Championship, that if it's a tie, then the champion simply retains the title. But here, they're playing on for the money. The prize fund, $1 million to the winner, $500,000 to the loser. So the first player to get to 10.5 will win the greater part. If it's tied at 10-10, then they will simply split the prize fund. So that's the reason they're playing on.
So Anand can try to pick Kasparov's pockets to a cool $250,000 if he were to somehow win the next 3 games.
It's going to be very tough, though, and you just wonder, has Anand got it in him to fight today, particularly as he's playing with the black pieces, and that's going to be very hard.
And after the 5-hour marathon they had in Game 17, things must be doubly difficult for Anand. Now Kasparov opening with the move, pawn to e4.
So Garry not really looking to get into a big fight today. All he needs is a draw to win the $1 million. So he's just going to be playing very solidly indeed, waiting for Anand to make all the progress, for Anand to make all the running in this game.
But Danny, after Kasparov played the move knight to f3 there, what are the odds of the world champion losing 3 games in a row and 2 with the white pieces?
Pretty slim, and you wonder just how hard Anand is going to try today.
Well, it's been a long match lasting almost 5 weeks, and the players must be dead tired.
Well, earlier in the match, Kasparov said this is a marathon and not a sprint, and I tell you, they look like they've been through a marathon in this match so far. Very tired, both players exhausted from the struggle.
So Kasparov just trying to settle himself. He knows a draw is all he needs, and he's probably hoping that Anand will give him the gift of a draw in this game, and he played the move bishop to f3 and offered Anand a draw.
This is actually a very clever moment for Kasparov to offer the draw, because the game is actually at a crossroads. Anand knows that if he plays on here, Kasparov could choose between a very safe continuation or a very aggressive continuation. And that puts a sense of doubt in the Indian's mind, and so he's more likely to accept the draw.
Well, Anand now sitting, mulling over this draw offer, and Kasparov trying to remain cool in this position, trying to act as if nothing phases him, but he must be burning up inside, hoping that Anand accepts this draw, because then it would be all over. And Anand did, and Kasparov has won the $1 million, and it's all over. Kasparov winning the World Championship by a score of 10.5 to 7.5, and Danny, it's been an amazing match. So Garry Kasparov won in impressive style, and Danny, he really played some brilliant chess in this match.
He certainly did. I think my favorite game was the 10th. First of all, he sacrificed a pawn, then a rook, just to get through to Anand's king, and he won a beautiful game. It was a power performance. Then the 14th game. That was critical. He knew that if Anand won, he'd be right back in the match. Kasparov had a lousy position, but he managed to turn it round in an amazing time scramble, and when he won that game, he knew the match was secure.
And that's $500,000. I think that's not bad for coming second. Perhaps you'd like to say a few words, Wishy.
Well, I'll try and not make this too long. But I just basically wanted to thank the people who've been very supportive of me in this event. My parents, over there, Maurice and Nieves, who've been there for me throughout this year, and I'd like to thank Eddie as well for coming along, Then there are my 4 seconds, Yusupov, Ubilava, John Spielman's over here, and Patrick's over here. Really, without without a lot of help, it's difficult to go there and play very well. And it was really helpful having everybody here. And I hope you all had a lot of fun watching the event, especially today's nail-biting finish.
Thanks, Vishy. You can listen. Completely right.
No, that's right. That's more important.
It's more important to get the numbers right than the...
Garry, can you look up this way? Got $1 million smile.
How can you evaluate it?
Can you keep it up a second, please?
Okay. Now, providing one of us doesn't drop it, the Intel World Championship trophy. Perhaps a few words.
Yep. 10 years ago, when I won my first title, I thought that that would be, the greatest pleasure in my life, and I would never be so happy and pleased while winning another match. I won a few matches since that, but now I'm really, really happy. And this match represents a lot for me. This is not just an ordinary victory, another one. It will have very special memories in my collection.
Well, despite the champion defending his title a 5th consecutive time to the delight of his many fans, experts wondered if his play lacked the vigor of a younger Kasparov.
Some people will say that after this match, Kasparov, the quality of Kasparov chess is not improving and even maybe diminishing, but it's more than enough. It was more than enough to defend my title. Now, maybe I'm not any more convincing as just a player who can win all events he plays, but I'm still quite convincing in defending my title. And I believe this amount of energy will be preserved for a few years at least.
Till the year 2000?
If I want to go, if I want to play, as I said, I have enough energy, enough motivation, and enough chess stamina to carry on my title until the end of the century.
Any more?
Terrific.
Thank you. That was great. Well done. End of the century. That's very nice.
Sorry, I made a mistake. I should say end of millennium.
So it was a memorable 5 weeks of struggle, an upstart challenger taking the lead, defending title holder showing what it takes to be a true champion. For Danny King, I'm Maurice saying so long from New York and the 1995 Intel World Chess Championship.